Good evening. My name is Sara Haq. I'm a student of Faculty of Law, Delhi University, and I will be presenting for the motion.
Request the audience just to remain.
Before we begin with the correlation between patents and innovation, let us begin with understanding what are patents. Patents are a state-granted monopoly which skews the laws of demand and supply, granting the owner the sole right to sell that drug at whatever cost they may please, however exorbitant. There are several criticisms because of the efficacy of the patent system. High costs, long delays of patent litigation, low R&D output, and various other criticisms. And these, ladies and gentlemen, are only the tip of the iceberg. Yet, patents are continued to be defended by international bodies and pharmaceutical companies alike, all on one premise, that patents are the lifeblood of innovation. Patents foster drug discovery. Today, I shall attempt to dispel this myth. The very definition of patentability is very vague. To quote US Judge Learned Hand in the case of Air Production Company Limited, he said, whether an invention is patentable is as fugitive, impalpable, wayward, and vague a phantom as exists in the paraphernalia of legal concepts. Patents are subjective. Subjectivity creates a ground for misuse, and evergreening is the blatant fact which tells us that patents and innovation are perceived as two very different goals for the pharmaceutical companies. Now that we have covered whatever is wrong with the patent system, it is imperative for me to outline the solutions, the various alternatives. But before I do that, we say that we need patents for innovation. But research suggests that for every $1 that goes to basic research, ladies and gentlemen, $19 go to advertising and promotions. $19 is to $1. Considering the alternatives, we could start with open innovation, probably learn a lesson or two from Tesla or NASA. We need to go beyond our organizational boundaries, create patent pools, prize funds, which could be new incentives which would foster innovation. I would ask you to think about a very recent outbreak of Ebola. Did you know that Ebola existed? It's been there in Africa for several years. But the moment it entered the lives of the rich, the pharma companies came up with a vaccine. It took them, what, a year? So clearly, their priorities are pretty out there. Millions are being spent on R&D for the developed countries. There's a research that says that more than 90% of the R&D goes towards the diseases affecting only 20% of the global population. People are dying, ladies and gentlemen, in Africa from diseases like HIV, malaria, tuberculosis. Somebody dies from tuberculosis every 20 seconds. If we are innovating, why don't they have the drugs? Certain arguments before said that this debate is not about patents, whether they are accessible. But if really the state cannot encompass such operations, let me bring to light a fact that the US government in their last budget expended a staggering amount of $1,356 billion on healthcare. an amount which could very well encapsulate the R&D operations of all the pharmaceutical companies, which stands at a comparatively minuscule $54 billion. All the companies. Coming back to the alternatives, we need to create prize funds such as the TB prize fund and thus avoid the pitfalls of the patent system. The WHO, in collaboration with other international agencies, must come up with the global fund for R&D. And they should also encapsulate other frameworks which mirror other initiatives along the same lines, for example, the International Health Partnership. To conclude, I must say that the patent system has run its course, and it can no longer be defended on the pillar of innovation because the pillar itself has cracked. To end with a quote by one of the greatest minds of our century, Stephen Hawking, he said, "We seem to have discovered the universe. Let us patent the universe and charge everyone royalties for their existence." Thank you.
Well, I have a lot of questions for you, but since I can ask only one, you said vehemently that there is this ratio of 1:19, and I'm presuming that they add the advertisement charges to the value they say that it took them to discover the drug. Well,
I very well quoted that one. Sorry. Let him complete. Okay.
Well, let's not go into patents at that stage. Let's say we change the accounting standards and not let them add advertisement into the R&D budget. Will that be okay with you?
My problem is not what their R&D budget is or isn't. My problem is defending patents on the pillar of innovation. That money is not finding its way into the research labs. It was very evident from the budget of all the pharmaceutical companies. Their R&D budget was $54 billion altogether. When the US government can expend $1,356 billion just on their healthcare, imagine what if all of us create a patent pool? What money would we have and what innovations will we see? Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, members of the jury. I'm Hardeep Singh. I'm a final year student of Amity Law School, Delhi. Well, the concerns that my learned friends share are very much shared by me as well. I've been sitting here since 1 p.m. and, well, my exam got over and I had nothing to do. So I've been just sitting here and wondering whether, this is actually, whether I'm standing at the right podium or should I be standing there. And I feel, after a lot of introspection, that actually I've been standing on the right podium since when I stood here. So, my father, he used to say, never let facts come in picture when you have a good story. I googled it, it's attributed to Mark Twain, he actually copied it. So, what are we doing here? We have a good story that we are romanticizing party. What we are trying to say is that heck with the patent system, you have this drug, lynch this drug and give it to other people because, it'll help more and more people. The utilitarianism or socialism. I'm not defending here the philosophical underpinnings of the very isms that we have. All I'm saying is whether the patents are in fact the best way for drug discovery and how to understand whether patents are the best way or there is any alternative. I'll first like to delve with how a drug is discovered. A drug is discovered when you have a 10,000 molecule sample size and you're dealing with the sizes that are over a period of 10 years that people actually, the drug companies, they research on those sample size and they select one or two, and out of those that they've selected, they have a sample size of clinic, this is preclinical stage, and they have clinical stages, which takes about 10 years, or more or less. Now, forget about how much does it take for the cost of the drug to be produced. However, look at the fact that this is just the stage before the patenting. Now, after patenting, you still have FDA approval. Now, FDA approval takes like about 8-10 years. Now, the monopoly, which is highly criticized by my learned friend, is just for probably a 10-year. Now, if a company is invested $1 billion, or let's say even $100 million for that fact, they want returns on their investment. Now, to do so, what they usually price the drug so high that the opposition is that they can't afford it. Now, though it's been claimed that, this is not the point of the discussion, however, I'll still delve with it. Now, the limited monopoly that they have, there are a lot of financial instruments that they could use. China, for example, says that you need to give 2 shots of a drug for free, even though the person buys the other shots. So that effectively brings down the amount of money required to buy that drug. Africa, what they do is they do it on scale. Now, if the person is a very poor person, and a lot the disease is an outbreak, then that person can sell it on scale and then earn money. So there are a lot of financial shenanigans, as I like to call it, that you can do to earn that money. Now, why I say that patents is the best way to go forward for drug innovation, let's look at the alternatives and then let's decide. Now, the alternatives that we have are crowdsourcing or crowdfunding. So people pay, and people pay $500 million. So they collect, let's say, 1 billion people come together, and they crowdfund, and they then innovate. Now, is it necessary that that drug will actually, that molecule that we are discovering will actually become a drug? It's not possible. And this crowdfunding can, as my learned friend suggested, can be done by governments. However, people don't have that money. Taxpayers' money is not available in sufficiency that it can be used for drug innovation. Now, the other alternative is that you give prizes to scientists, you give them funding, that you innovate this, and no one will have the IP rights, and it will become a generic drug.
1 minute remains.
Yes, sir. Now, that alternative fails because though it is a very great initiative and it should be done, but it is in supplement to the patent system. The patent system in itself is the very core that identifies itself with private interests that are ready to invest certain surplus of money that they have in creating a new molecule or a drug later on. Now, that cannot be done while you're crowdfunding, because you're dependent on a third party, which may or may not be able to give you a sustained result, because that is itself in a very ad hoc fashion. I'd like to end by saying that the Mark Twain quote, I told my dad that when your facts are very good, then your story automatically becomes an amazing story to see. Thank you.
You talk about facts. You say that countries like China, Africa, people are getting the drugs at affordable costs thanks to the state. Why then are millions in Africa dying? You said open innovation is an ad hoc process. Do you know NASA has come up with such brilliant results with their open innovation campaign? Do you know Coca-Cola, which is a multi-million-dollar company, hasn't patented their formula yet? It uses trade secrets, other IP rights. Why then just patents to foster innovation?
Okay, I'll come to the first prong of your question, open innovation. Now, Government of India has open science department which focuses on drug innovation in an open environment. Now what they do is they are dependent on other people to help them. They are dependent on the open source network, and if certain people do not come and do not give their inputs, the open source network clearly fails. Now NASA may be an outlier. It is not a system which is sustainable. It is an ad hoc system. Now secondly, Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola is a trade secret, we all know. Now, Coca-Cola, if let's say tomorrow Pfizer made all their drugs a trade secret and Coca-Cola by now hasn't been reverse engineered, if it is, then Coca-Cola can price their product as much as they want, supply and demand. Now, they want to earn, they want, if I'm investing $1 billion in making a drug, I want, before my monopoly expires, to be able to recover that money. Now, I won't.
Thank you.
Hello, judges. My name is Sandeep Bhalotia. Yes, ma'am? Yeah, sure. My name is Sandeep Bhalotia. हर दवा एक मरहम होती है, हर दवा एक मरहम होती है, इसके कद्र करने वालों को आज़ाद परिंदों की तरह छोड़ दो, इसकी कद्र करने वालों को आज़ाद परिंदों की तरह छोड़ दो, क्योंकि अगर यह गुलाम रही तो जिंदगी भी गुलाम रहेगी. Good evening, honorable judges, my worthy opponent and dear audience. My name is Sandeep Bhalotia and I stand here to strongly support the motion of today's debate. Let's start the ending of this debate with the two most frightening statements that a patient from a developing nation could ever hear of. The first statement for such patient would be when you tell him there is no drug available in the market that could ever treat your disease. And the second statement, which is equally frightening for him to hear about, would be when you tell him, although there is a drug available in the market, but you can't be treated by it because you can't afford it. You haven't earned enough in your life. How can you expect the pharmaceutical companies to provide that drug to you? Friends, I strongly believe that the first statement destroys the hope in that patient and the second statement destroys the humanity in this world. And I also believe that the current patent law is forcing these innocent pharmaceutical companies to create such a situation, in which these patients will be forced to hear these statements again and again. But wait, do you know what these pharmaceutical companies are saying? They are saying the patent law is a good law. It provides them for the incentive. And because of that very incentive, drug discovery is taking place. Friends, they do not tell you that their research is a mixture of self-serving facts, figures, statistics, and codes. They do not tell you their research is blowing an air of misconception and misrepresentation. Let me make it more clear for you. Friends, take a situation. Take a situation where there are two countries, one developed nation and another one is developing nation. And the people in both the nations are suffering from two separate diseases. There is a patent law. Therefore, there should be an incentive for these pharmaceutical companies to come with their drug. But where that incentive would lie is the real question. That incentive would lie in the developed nation, friends, because the people of that developed nation are earning more. And the people of the developing nation won't be able to give that much profit to the pharmaceutical companies which they are expecting from the people of the developed nation. Now, my question comes. Friends, tell me, is the best way to foster the drug discovery? At least I do not believe so. Let's take another situation, friends. Again, there are two nations. One developed nation and another one is the developing nation. But this time, people of both the nations are suffering from the same kind of disease. This time also, patent law is there in both the nations. Incentives should be there. But tell me, friends, will there be any price variation when a drug is discovered by these big pharmaceutical companies? Do you think the income of the people living in developed nation as well as in the developing nation would be same? At least I do not believe so. So the pharmaceutical companies will price their drug as per the demand in the developed nation, and people in the developing nation will be forced to suffer. They will suffer till they die from their suffering, although there is patent law, there is an incentive, and there is a pharmaceutical company. Friends, let's forget about patent being a best way or the worst way for the drug discovery. History has given us enough evidences to show us that humanity can be can develop the drug even in the absence of the patent law. Take for the example the penicillin or the polio vaccine. The inventor of that drug never thought of discovering, never thought of patenting it, and had never patented it. And that is precisely the reason, friends, because of which we were able to take those 2 bond of Zindagi in our childhood. That is precisely the reason, friends, because of which our Indian government was recently able to claim that it has almost eliminated the polio from India. Do you think that could have been possible if the patent was the intention to discover that drug? At least I do not believe so. Friends, it won't be wise for us to think that the patent law can transfer a deep pharmaceutical nation into a pharmaceutical nation, as one of our worthy opponents said that the patents transferred England from an agrarian nation into an industrialized nation. The patent lead to the industrial revolution. At least I do not believe so. Friends, take another example. Take the example of AIDS medicine. In 1980s, one of the precursors of Novartis came up with a drug that was meant to treat the people of HIV. That drug wasn't able to completely treat the patients of the HIV, but it made their life livable. But friends, it would be more wiser for us to remember that in the present time we use a cocktail to treat the patients of HIV, and that cocktail is not developed by a big pharmaceutical company. That was developed by an academic researcher without having an intention to patent it. And that's the reason India is able to transport that disease in 80% of the population of the developing countries. Do you still think the patents are the best way to foster the drug innovation? At least I do not believe so. Friends, whatever your religion might be, that is more traditional religion, that is the religion of capitalism or the religion of the monopoly, but the fallacy created by my worthy opponents to show a link between the patent and the innovation should not distract you to look about the alternative means of alternative means of drug manufacturing. Because friends, that innovation is not giving you new drugs, friends. That innovation is giving you drugs that is already exist in market in a new dosage form, in a new route of administration, and mixing it with some other ingredients that is leading to evergreening of the patent. And that's not the kind of incentive that our society demands for. That is not the kind of incentive for which the patent law came into the force. With this, I end my debate. But wait, I ended my debate by I urge you to take a stand, to protect the humanity, but not to take the side of the patent law. Because friends, patent law starts where genuine willingness to start the drug discovery ends and the greed for the money begins. Thank you.
Yeah, my question to you is, according to the American Constitution in the Article 1 copyright clause, it directly says that patents are an important step in helping discovery and having a better society at large. The first time patents as a concept was introduced in America, there were just 3 patents filed, and today we have more than 3 lakh. So without patents, how do you see motivating people and inspiring them to search for new things, invent new things?
I believe that's really a genuine question, but the problem with this question is my worthy opponent is talking about the first time then the patent came. But the first time the patent came, that was meant for other sectors of the economy rather than the pharmaceutical industry. The first thing is that we need to differentiate between the patents in one sector and the patents in the other sector, because the patents in the pharmaceutical sector are directly impacting upon the humanity. And the second thing is you are talking about the incentive, how the people in the market will be incentivized to discover the new drugs. As in my debate, I think you haven't heard it clearly. I've already shown that the patent was not at all required for the innovation, like in the case of the drugs where the academic researcher came up with a cocktail to treat the people. It was not required in the polio vaccine, and we have almost eliminated that disease from India. And it was also not required to make the Switzerland to reach into the global leader of the pharmaceutical sector. Still, there was a discovery taking place. So that, I think, answers your question.
I'm Ujjaini Chatterjee, and I'm going to speak against the motion, patents do not help foster drug discovery. A 100 years hence, who are you reading curiously my poems? 100 years hence. Rabindranath Tagore, 1896. Would Tagore be able to create all that he did if he was afraid about fetching his next meal, or he had a deadline to finish his poetry by, say, the next Monday? researchers and for drug discovery and for innovation on an average spend around 10 to 15 years to come up with a new drug. So needless to say, there is a lot of economic resource and a lot of time that has been invested on it. So a patent stands as a symbol of the rights that we grant to an innovator for the exclusivity to leverage the value that he has created out of his efforts. Now, when that exclusivity is taken away, keeping everything aside, the economic portion is harmed. And then the companies begin to deteriorate their investments. And what happens? Not just scientists lose their jobs and lose their positions, but also they are put into a complete pressure cooker situation in which they have to come up with their ideas as soon as they can. There is no freedom to fail. And without freedom to fail, how can there be discovery? It becomes something in a situation where we are so busy about fetching our regular mediocre struggles that we cannot concentrate on newer ideas and newer opinions. That's because the bilateral ties become very weak and investments grow very weak. Now, talking about the modern situation, I would like to talk about Francis Fukuyama and his paper on social capital. There he talks about something called a network of trust, in which every part of the society, from civil societies, companies, entrepreneurs, common men, everyone collaborate and work with each other with trust on each section of the society and create value for the society. Patents stand as this symbol of trust, that an innovator creates something and we recognize that creation and motivate him and trust that he's going to give his innovation for betterment and welfare of the society. And the innovator trusts the society that the society is going to give him his due. Saying that, Francis Fukuyama also says that it is very important that patents are granted and IPR has taken in a very formal and serious way in order to motivate people to come up with newer discoveries. Now, Novartis recently, and continues to give 95% of people who cannot afford their Glivec drug for free, and the rest 5% who require assistance, financial assistance, are given so. There are other companies which have come up with tiered pricing schemes. US-based companies have come up with tiered pricing schemes who give out reasonable pricing drugs for the Indian crowd. Now, how is this happening? Why is this possible? Because they are able to generate and they have the liquidity of the fund which they need. This is not, patents do not mean competition. Patent means it's a symbol of recognition and a legal framework in which we channelize the efforts in a particular manner. Now, generics is not a bad word. Even generics can be innovative. There are generics homegrown companies as well who have often come up with newer techniques, newer inventive methods. That also needs protection. That also needs research, and that also needs money. And besides money, as we had seen in the case, one of the earliest case of Kearns, where the recognition, where the name is very important for an inventor, that social recognition, that symbol of identification that we get. Now, I had begun by talking about Tagore's ambitions of being known after, say, 100 years. Indeed, he died, but his ideas did not. Whatever we do, according to the theory of psychological egoism given by Thomas Hobbes while explaining social contract theory, whatever we do it for our own good. We do it for ourselves. We have our self-interest there. Now, self-interest doesn't necessarily mean selfish. If self-interest is channelized in a particular manner, if social welfare can be attained out of it. Now, philanthropy cannot be a way in which we neglect somebody else's rights. That structuring is patent. Symbolizing that structure is patent, where the entity works together. Now, talking against globalization in the modern situation is like fighting with one's shadow. We do not come up with any results at all. And the entire globe is working together for betterment. Viktor Frankl, while describing human nature, he was a neurologist and psychiatrist, says whatever human beings do, they do not do it for pleasure or power, they do it for meaning. We are having this debate here today because most of us in this room might not be alive 100 years later. We are all going to die. Something's going to end every day. But what will stay back are our ideas and discovery. Now, what is a drug? A drug is anything that helps evolve our psychological, emotional, or physical, any kind of betterment. It helps in our evolution. It helps in our well-being. Now, how can well-being continue if there is no recognition of that drug? If the first patent was probably stained glass in England. Now, look where we've come. From a crocin, we have a Glivec drug where we are trying to cure cancer. We are giving so much time. We are investing so much of wealth. Why are we doing that? Because we have that motivation that if we do something, we're going to get something out of it. Probably we'll become immortal. And that immortality is what motivates us and inspires us to go ahead with our ideas and our inspirations and our innovations. And that is what keeps us. Otherwise, probably we would be stuck to the wheel even today. Say, even during the Cold War situation, there was this idea of soft power coming up. Both the blocks were inventing to the core. They all wanted to come up and stay ahead of everybody. Now today, I'm not going to share my speech with anybody, no matter how bad or good it is, because it's mine and it's my identity. A patent is a symbol of that identity. As I conclude, I would like to quote my favorite scholar from the Vedic times, Maitreyi. She said, while discussing about the question of wealth, what do I do with something with which I do not become immortal? Immortality is the cause, not patents. Thank you.
Can I start? Okay. So my question to you is that whenever research and development takes place, usually pharmaceutical companies cite a huge amount that is spent in the research and development. So, but if you look at the actual cost that is incurred by them is usually quite less because you spend 1/3 of the amount on the advertising that particular drug. So my question is, why there is a need to advertise a drug that is going to save millions of lives? Because see, I will tell you why I'm asking this question. There is something that always goes in my mind whenever I think about that a pharmaceutical company is going to spend 1/3 of its amount into advertising. See, the problem is just yeah. So I thought there's time limit. Okay. Okay, see, I see the logic when you advertise a mascara, a lipstick, or a facial mark. But I do not see any logic when you want to advertise a life-saving medicine. What is the logic to spend 1/3 of your amount in advertising and call it as a huge investment? Can you please explain me?
First of all, the idea of a patent is not about it being a lipstick or something else. The idea is about creating an atmosphere and ecosystem of innovation, and that patents help in developing. Now, talking about advertisements can always be regulated. You can always say the kind of things you're going to put up on your advertisements are necessarily not an effect of patents. Now, patents are standing as that regulating scheme. If not patents, then what? It would be like a rule of jungle when anybody comes up with anything and there is no system to regulate anything, right? So, advertisements are necessarily not a part of patent system. So, how do you even talk about an advertisement law or media laws being hampered because of patents?
Yeah.